welcome. This is really exciting for us. We've never participated in a virtual roundtable before, so I'm sure we're all a little bit nervous, but this is the new reality. My name is Jennifer D. I'm the admissions manager at Waldorf Academy, and tonight we have 2 alumni and 1 current parent. This is how it's going to work tonight. I'm going to pose several questions, first to Danielle, Danielle Marcos, and then I will shift to the 2 of our alumni. And if you want to pose a question, what you can do is write it in the chat, and then we will get to your questions at the end of the event. But at any point, you can start writing your questions in, and I will address it then to the appropriate person on our panel. So quick introduction. I would like to welcome Desana Rose. Desana, who is a graduate from the class of 2014 and is currently in her 3rd year at university. I'm sure she'll talk about that a little bit more. And then we have Ali Sholjana, wave Ali, who is currently in grade 12 at the Toronto Waldorf High School, and he's a graduate from the class of 2017. And then we have our current parent, Danielle Marcos, who is, she's currently our co-chair of our parent council, and she also has 2 sons in grades 1 and 3 attending our school. What is also, I think, interesting to note is that both Ali and Desana started at our school from kindergarten and went all the way through. Okay, so tonight I'm going to begin with Danielle, and I'm going to pose all of the questions to Danielle, and then we'll shift to the alumni. Are you set, Danielle?
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, first question. What did you appreciate most about the school? Oh, sorry, wrong one, alumni. Okay. Why did you choose the school originally, and in which ways is the school what you expected, and maybe in which ways it is not?
Yeah, so I'll start with why we chose the school originally. So when I thought back to my school days, I realized that the years that I had made connections with my teacher, I remembered the year very well, and I usually enjoyed it. And years that I didn't make a good connection with my teacher, I tended not to remember anything else of that entire year. And when my children came into the world, I saw that they had a lot of personality traits like myself, and I knew that they were going to need a place that had warmth and that had connection. So that was really important to me. And the fact that the Waldorf teachers were often with their students for more than 1 year was also very attractive. So then I started to learn more, and over the years, there were even more features that drew me in further. And should I go to the next part? In what ways?
I was just going to, before you go to that, was there someone who mentioned or that you knew that had attended Waldorf already?
Yeah, my yoga teacher actually is the parent of 2 alumni, Anusha Reddy and Harsha Reddy. So I knew of this school from them initially, but it's funny, like some folks say Waldorf finds you. It seemed like when my kids got to be around junior kindergarten age, I started hearing more and more from people that their child had attended, or they knew someone who had attended. And I met Geraldine Dempsey, who was another Waldorf Academy parent. At that time, she was a current parent through a mother and baby program. And I started picking her brain, and it went from there. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So yes, the second part, in which ways is the school what you expected, and in which ways it is not?
Yeah, I would say that the school exceeded my expectations in terms of the level of commitment and caring of the teachers. It has been absolutely phenomenal. They really try to understand my child at a deep level and see what's operating for them and how they can help that child engage and overcome the obstacles. So that has been just like such a gift. I can't even express it, especially now in this context when the pandemic is so topsy-turvy, makes everything so crazy, but they feel so anchored And that even applies to my youngest, who just transitioned into grade 1, which in and of itself is a difficult transition. And he's got new teachers this year and a new cohort. And he already, 5 weeks in, is getting so grounded. It's really beautiful to see. Ways in which it wasn't what I would have expected. I had a little story around this. So when my first child started kindergarten, I decided about a month in that I was going to buy him a little present from the school store. And he picked out a little paper bag that had a picture of a knight and a picture of a dragon on it. And I thought, oh, how great. He's going to have like a little knight toy and a little dragon toy. And then we got home and he opened it, and I realized that it was not a knight and a dragon. It was all the materials to make a knight and a dragon. So there was like felt and needles and thread and a little peg doll and instructions. And I was just like, oh my God, because I haven't, sewn much. And my son was like, make the dragon. And I spent the rest of the evening doing that. And that's kind of a metaphor for my life as a Waldorf parent. I've ended up doing so many things that I would have never, ever thought that I would do, from, baking to making costumes to organizing events. And it actually has been really great because I love that stuff. And it's given me opportunities to learn and grow with my kid. And quite frankly, lots of parents don't want to do those things and they don't do them. And that's okay too. But I would definitely say that's something that's been different than what I was expecting.
A nice surprise in a paper bag.
For sure.
Okay, second question. What is the biggest impact the school has had on your child or children?
Yeah. So my older son, I should say, he's been at the school already for 5 years, so I have a bit more length of experience with him. But for both of my children, the number one thing has been seeing how they get the confidence to take on things that are difficult and to struggle with them, and to make it through that struggle and come out the other side having mastered something. And the things that they've mastered range from, reading to knitting to acting in a play like public speaking to writing. Many of those things were very challenging for them initially. And it's been remarkable to see how supported they have been through that process of engaging, struggling, and coming through the other end, and how confident that is making them to just take on more and more things. They really are starting to feel, especially my older son is starting to feel kind of unstoppable. And that's really exciting for me as a parent.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The resilience, that they get from struggling, but then the achievement.
Yeah. Knitting was a big one because knitting is hard. Like, at least for me, it is hard. And there's moments of like, why do I have to do this? And it's like, I just can't. I can't do it. And Ms. Moffat, their knitting teacher, would always say, you can't do it yet. But you're gonna be able to do it. And they do. And then when they've finished, oh my gosh, the pride. It's amazing.
I'm sure Allie's going to have a story about knitting later on that we'll get to. Okay, next question. What does your child have to say, or your children, about the school?
Yeah, I was lucky because I actually know the answer to this question, because my older son, Adlin, had the opportunity to let a prospective student kind of show her around when she was checking out the school, and he got to answer some questions and tell her what his impressions of the school were. And he told this incoming student that she would be listened to here, that the teachers would incorporate her ideas. If she had an idea, it would be used and incorporated. It wouldn't just be put aside. And I think that really speaks to how valued he feels as a person at the school. And just the fact he's a student doesn't mean that he doesn't have a voice, so that he always emphasizes how caring the teachers are. And in terms of the one from I want to say something about the younger guy too, though it's harder to get him to like actually speak out to it. But we had an experience today, which I thought was really telling. So my younger guy is very much a kid who lives in his head. He loves numbers, he loves reading, and he was really not that much into the outdoor education part of Waldorf in the initial years, in his kindergarten years. But today we had a play date after school, and he wanted to show me the ravine where they're doing a lot of classes these days because there's a lot of outdoor learning because of the pandemic. And he was so excited to take me down this path and past this little creek and then over this log. He said, "This is where we play." And he's like, "Mom, it's like another world here." He was really convinced that it was another world. And I think that speaks to the wonder that they're able to infuse into the learning here.
Yeah, trying to keep that magic alive for them.
Yeah.
Wonderful. All right, our next question, and I know this is very interesting for you. If the school were to be represented as a single person, what would its personality be like in only 3 words?
Yeah. Yeah, this was the hardest question for me because how do you encompass a school into a person? But I thought if it was a person, I would say that our school is Mother Earth. And I would describe her as warm, wise, and surprisingly deep. And part of the reason I chose that is because I think the Waldorf curriculum is really inspired by the earth, by the earth's rhythms, by the myths and the archetypes in the natural world and in the human world. And I think that's why it has such an enduring appeal, because it really is addressing the whole person, both giving them knowledge to develop their mind, but also developing the heart and engaging with the heart and engaging with making things, with their ability to create. And so it's just like very deeply satisfying on all those levels. And when we first joined the school, I really didn't know anything about Waldorf education. I just knew that it felt nice. Like when I went into the school, it felt good. And the teachers I felt were relatable. But the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, wow, this rabbit hole is deep. You know, you can just kind of keep going. So I feel the same way.
Yes.
Yeah, I just feel the same way about being in nature. It's like, wow, you can just keep going and keep learning stuff. So that's
Yeah, just wonderful levels to it each year. I'm sure through your children and your own study as well. I really love that image of the Mother Earth. That's perfect. All right, we have our last question. It's kind of a little bit more loaded too. How would you describe the values of the school and the values of the families in the school community?
Yeah, so I would say for the values of the school, there's the school values community. That's something that I've really had inculcated into me by being in Ms. Carity's class. It was always about us, like as a community and how we can support each other. It definitely supports creativity, both in the children and, like I said, amongst the parents. You get lots of opportunities to make things, come up with things. I think there's a strong value placed on collaboration, working together, not just the parents working together to do something, but even the way that the grades interact with each other. Like grade 1 gets paired with grade 8 and grade 2 gets paired with grade 7. And they come together to make things like plays that really they depend on everybody's input. Mm-hmm. Warmth, as I already mentioned, that human connection, beauty, the classrooms are beautiful. There's a value that's placed on beauty. So I remember in kindergarten, we were asked to sometimes bring in flowers, and the kids would be so proud when it's their day to provide the flowers, and everybody's going to enjoy the flowers, you know? So it's really showing how beauty is respected in a way that sometimes it's considered a frill in modern life. And kindness, being kind, being polite. The teachers are always modeling this for the kids, and it's wonderful when you get to see the older kids looking out for the younger kids. And finally, respect for the earth by having this strong connection with the earth, and then how can we nourish that and increase that by doing like the gardening and by doing outdoor education and so on. And for values that the families in the school community have, I feel like there's a lot of overlap with the values of the school. So I would probably say, in addition to this, they also strongly value a learning environment that's caring and supportive. I've heard a lot of parents at the school say this is the right environment for my child. They were looking for that aspect of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
would say that would be another thing.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
Danielle, you did it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We're right on track. And
Okay.
also, I would just let our audience know that if you want to submit a question, especially particularly to Danielle as a current parent, you can just write it in the chat. And also at a future time when you want to come to the school or have a tour, Danielle's also really willing to connect with families as well. Thank you so much,
Totally.
Danielle.
My pleasure.
Okay, we're going to shift to Allie. Are you ready, Allie? You're on mute.
I'm ready.
Okay, Allie, just before we begin, tell us a little bit about where you are right now in terms of what school and what
Okay,
grade.
sure. So I am in my last year of high school. I am going to TWS, the Toronto Waldorf School. And yeah, it's amazing. I am so glad that I picked it. Um, it was like the typical Waldorf route, and I definitely don't regret it. And yeah.
Allie, just before we get started, so I guess now this is the time that you're also going to be looking at after school, what you're going to do. And you just touched a bit about your exploring different post-secondary options.
Yeah.
Any
Um,
ideas?
well, yes, I think I have more concrete ideas in terms of programs as opposed to specific schools. But I'm definitely heavily leaning towards something like poli-sci, sociology related. And I was thinking that that would be my major. And because I went on a linguistic exchange in the 10th grade, and I discovered that I'm like obsessed with French and I really want to become fluent at some point and maybe like move there or something. But I'm thinking of minoring in French, um, as well as, yeah, the sociology aspect and just equity and all of that.
Wonderful. Okay, let's jump into the questions. What did you appreciate most about the school during your time there? And how has your perspective on that changed now that you've had some distance from the school? So it's a two-parter.
Well, I would definitely say that the thing that I appreciated most, there were lots, obviously, but the thing I appreciated most about the school was definitely just the tight-knit community, because it really is unparalleled. Like I don't see that anywhere else. We were all so close, like me and my classmates, me and people from different classes. Like it really didn't matter whether we were at assemblies or doing various things, field trips. We were all together, and even the parents were like super close as well. Um, and yeah, like everyone knows each other, and it's just always just a blast whenever I see anyone from Waldorf, whether by coincidence or just by planning, which sort of leads into the next part of the question, because I seriously like just my perspective on the community is really just enhanced now because I still like legitimately keep in touch with a huge portion of my old class. Some of my best friends are from that group, and I'm like so grateful for that because I feel like not a ton of other people could really say the same about their respective elementary schools because, of course, you have friends, but the longevity of those relationships are really just, they're natural and they just sort of happen when you've been together for so long, and it's just super harmonious and it's really nice. Yeah.
And it's not to say that I'm sure you didn't get along, but you worked through it. And you also had classmates that came much later as well. Not
Oh,
everyone
yeah.
comes from kindergarten.
And yeah,
Yeah.
and exactly. I mean, I think that I was lucky to have come from kindergarten, but there were lots of kids who I'm sure were a little worried, even people up to grade 8 the last year, they were like, oh, I wonder how I'm going to sort of like integrate into this super tight knit class. But we're like totally a family no matter when you show up. And yeah, like it's totally, there's no hierarchy of any kind. We're all just so close, and it's amazing. There's no problem blending in or whatever it is. It's really great. Yeah, I'm so grateful that I was a part of that.
Thank you. All right, next question. What, to the best of your knowledge, most differentiates the school from others? You
I
can
would
say knitting.
yeah, oh my gosh, that was a catastrophe for me at least. Um, but I'd say the class sizes were
Mhm.
definitely, um, I can't even stress how important it is to be in a class small enough for a teacher to really be able to, you know, cater to the individual needs of whoever it is, whoever student needs extra help, because, you know, like I was never really like a self-starter or whatever. Like I wasn't totally off the grid in my own world, but I sort of was. And it's like impossible to even fall behind or anything because the teachers are just like, they know you and they like nip that in the bud and they're so great. I mean, they stick with, well, first of all, those teachers, like Danielle was saying, they stay with you for multiple years. And so you really develop this relationship. So it's like the class size compounded by, you know, the closeness of the teachers. And it's just, it's so nice. It's like you really, you can't sort of slip into the background and not be seen or whatever. You're always, you know, an integral part of everything. And I think the small class size, you know, accounts for, like, there's a lot of discussion based moments that you have, which is great. It's not just like a talking at you type of vibe.
Mhm.
um and yeah, I'd say, I mean, that's, I
Mhm.
still have small class sizes obviously due to the continuation of the Waldorf thing, but a lot of
How
my
many, Allie, how many kids were in your class? How many students?
I think 2021 is around, yeah, this year. But yeah, I was just gonna say that a lot of my friends who ended up going on to public school from Waldorf were like, oh my gosh, you know, I miss having that sort of small group aspect because I can just sort of like fade away and it's like person number 17 or whatever. And that's just not a thing here.
No, you can't hide. You can't
No.
hide. Thank you. Okay, our next question. If the school were to be represented as a single person, what would its personality be like in only 3 words?
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna try to keep the tangents at a minimum. But I would say the first word I have to do creative because come on, I mean the whole brand is like just fostering a creative atmosphere. We do, you know, plays and there's music and there's so much, you know, the outdoor learning, there's so much painting and art and movement, and there's just so much going on that just sort of like puts it at like a beyond the tier of another school per se. Like it's really just so creative. And I, my second word would definitely be, I guess I would do like a hyphen here to make it one word, but socially engaged would be
Mm-hmm.
a huge thing. You know, beyond, I mean, of course, Waldorf Academy is super environmentally conscious as well. But even just like, I'm just thinking back to these projects that you do at your last year at the school. They're called the Hero Projects. And you basically, this is among many other various things that we've done, but this is what I'm thinking of. You basically pick someone who inspires you socially and you research them, you know, you find books, you do everything you can, you immerse yourself in that whole moment, and then you actually end up putting it out into the world and to an audience of, you know, parents and students and everyone, as like you do a monologue, and there's a lot of different aspects, and it really just, it's very socially engaged in terms of, I feel like a lot of other elementary schools sort of just maybe almost like tipping around that sort of thing, but Waldorf is like sort of right on it and very, you know, when things happen, we talk about it and right in the moment, and there's just a lot of awareness.
So you had creative, socially engaging, maybe
Yeah.
one more, although you've covered so much.
Yeah, sorry. I'd say the last word, I would just say bright, because I mean, again, this is like, I still think of it in this way, but it, like, Waldorf may seem like, well, it is like a different vibe from the usual school in all of the good ways. But people really do often like underestimate the academic standard that it sets. Because, well, I remember being super nervous about high school, and, because actually a lot of like my non-Waldorfian friends who are maybe a grade above me were like, oh my God, this jump is like insane. I was not prepared for this. I'm like freaking out. And I was like just internalizing that as well. But once I got there, I was like, this is completely fine. I remember learning about this in a grade much earlier, or like it's really, it is so, I wouldn't say deceptively, but I think it's just like you don't sacrifice anything in like, oh, we are so artsy and creative and amazing, but we don't do no, it's not like that at all. You have them both, and you foster the academia as well as the creativity. And so I'd say bright would be a good third word, because it's an underrated aspect of the school.
I love that. Thank you. Okay, our next question. What one thing would you change about the school for the better if you had to choose something?
Um, well, actually, one thing I was thinking about, which I can't really say is a fault of the schools, but I definitely, one thing would probably be the diversity within the student body.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that being said, I truly do think that it's more of an issue of, in terms of people even knowing that the school exists, because Waldorf is like a super niche, like, you sort of have to look for it. And I feel like it would be so amazing to have more families of color just as a part of the whole community. And of course, there are many, but I feel like just like if there was just somehow, I wouldn't like, I don't know how to make that a thing, but just to somehow sort of like cast that out and be like, hey, this is like a super amazing place. And I just feel like more people need to know about the school, really. That's all I can say.
Yeah, no, diversity is definitely a priority. Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, and I think, we've got two more questions for you. What would families find most surprising about the school?
Um, I would say, you can still hear me, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I'd probably say, this may seem redundant actually, but again, like I was saying, Waldorf is always thought of like this quirky alternative school, which is true, but you are really like, it is not to be toyed with academically. And I mean, it's amazing. Like there are certain things that you do in the super, super, super early grades that are like, wow, this is, this is nice. This is like a bonus type of thing. But then once you get into, especially just right off the gates, you can tell that, there's a lot going on. And you're like, I even was just thinking, like, I actually finished U-level French last year in grade 11, because like the French program was super good at Waldorf Academy. And so then when I got to high school, it was like not a walk in the park, but it was a little easier. And, the math is great. And there's just, it's not, I wouldn't say accelerated in terms of not being able to like keep up or anything, but it's really just like a tier above in terms of the quality of both the teaching and the material itself. So I'd say that's a little surprise maybe.
It might be surprising, yes, yes. Because often people think of it as this art school, or as you said, yeah, this alternative, but realize that there is this complete other balance that we have with the academics.
Definitely.
Thank you. All right, and your last question. What advice would you give to students just entering the school? So, I mean, you might want to think about yourself as kindergarten, and then maybe, I don't know, grade 3, maybe a couple of options.
Yeah. Well, I don't even know what I would say to a kindergartner, but I mean, I really don't even remember whether I even like I don't I was actually just thinking, and I mean, maybe I'll go back to the kindergartner thing, but I was looking at my bookshelf the other day, and I had like this ancient book called Middle School: The Worst Years of My Life. And I remember reading those like Diary of a Wimpy Kid-esque books when I was younger than middle school and thinking, oh my God, this is insane. I already hate middle school and I haven't even been there yet. And just thinking it was like this clique infested catastrophe. But once I got there, I was like almost disappointed because it was like so nice. It was just that, I mean, of course, cliques will always, well, hopefully not, but like will always exist and be a part of things. It's middle school. I mean, but it's so, it's so familial. Like you can't even like, there is no hierarchy of any kind. I would say that like, if there was somebody entering a middle school, I'd be like, don't even start being stressed out about anything like that because you are going to be like totally embraced with like out any second thought, and that goes for all grades. It's really you just like integrate, and it's just like it's so ironic because like it's such a tight-knit group but it's so welcoming. So I would say to not worry about any of that. And then for kindergartners,
You don't have to. I mean,
I don't even know, but I would
yeah.
definitely stress the whole point of just don't worry. I mean, middle school is just catastrophic for everyone, just in terms of the era of that. But in terms of when you're at school, you are like, you feel safe and loved, and just it's really great. It totally like destroys all of that negative stigma around those teenage angsty years.
Wonderful. Well, Ali, thank you so much. We've
Thank
completed your segment and you did great.
you. Oh, thank you.
Dasana Rose, how are you?
I am good, thank you. Or sorry, my mother's here. I'm well, thank you.
All right, Dasana, just before we get into the question, just quickly tell us about where you are and what you're doing right now.
Okay, well, I just started my third year at the University of Waterloo. I'm studying a combination of business and rhetoric, which is taught through the English faculty here. And it's essentially the study of how we use our language and what effect our language has. So that's everything from how ads work to how an author tells a story. And I chose my program because I love languages and I wanted something broad. But what's really unique about my program is that we alternate between full-time school and full-time like real-world work placements. So I'm currently working as the marketing and communications coordinator for the Economic Development Corporation here in Waterloo. And I'm really enjoying that. And I'm going to be doing that for the next few months before I go back to school.
That's fantastic. So is it a 5-year program? Or is it still within a 4-year?
Yeah, because we have the co-op segment, it is a 5-year program.
Wonderful. Okay, let's jump into the questions. What did you appreciate most about the school during your time there? And how has your perspective on that changed now that you've had some distance from the school?
Well, I will say my answers are going to overlap a little bit with what's already been said. But what I appreciated most while I was at Waldorf was the level of care and individual attention that I received from my teachers. Much like Ali and Danielle have both said, teachers at Waldorf take the time to get to know their students extremely well. This is especially possible because students remain with the same teachers year after year. So you get to develop these really deep and long-term bonds. But even from the very beginning, I remember my teacher having individual discussions with every student in our class, even in grade 1, and taking the time to get to really understand where we were as a student, what we wanted, what we needed. And then teachers use that information to really cater the education to each student's individual needs. So throughout my entire time at Waldorf, I felt like my teachers were consistently able to meet me where I was, which meant challenging me in classes that I found easier, or helping me with supplemental work, or helping me work through difficult problems in classes that I struggled with. but then also meeting me outside of the classroom and helping engage me socially and help me develop as a person, not just as a student. Since I've left Waldorf, I still appreciate that very much. And I would say that the thing that I appreciate most has remained the same, but I think I have a better understanding of the value of teachers helping you outside of the sort of class material. I never struggled with school all that much, and when I did, it was only because I wasn't working hard. So my teachers were able to give me more difficult material, but more importantly, I felt like they helped me become a better person. I was loud as a child. I still can be, but now it's a positive thing. I could be argumentative, I could be bossy, and I was able to overcome that without any harshness from my teachers, because instead they found ways to engage me and help me connect with my other classmates. And so my learning wasn't just about whatever it was we were covering in class, but it was also about how to be a better member of a community and how to give back to my classmates. And I feel like those skills have served me immensely, both in my academic life and just in the real world. And I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you. What, to the best of your knowledge, most differentiates the school from others?
I think what most differentiates Waldorf from other schools is the level of creativity that is incorporated into basically every aspect of the learning. Again, it's already been said, but I'll just re-emphasize it. One thing that really stands out is how broad and how deep each of the class assignments or class units are. So I'll give an example of, say it's a geography unit in grade 5 and the students are learning about ancient Greece. There is the very academic learning where students read books, where students are read to by the teachers, where students write essays and other written assignments about ancient Greece. But there's also a real creative aspect that teaches students to engage with the material on a deeper level. And that can be as simple as drawing a map of ancient Greece, so you understand sort of the visual connection between where Greece is and what life was like there and how that physically lays out on the ground. But it's also recreating Greek sculptures with clay, or painting things that were painted in ancient Greece. It might be doing a presentation or doing a play that's set in ancient Greece. And so I think that not only does Waldorf incorporate this level of creativity, but it's also a breadth of creativity, and every student is given a chance to use their different talents and to really figure out how to connect with the material in a deep way and how to bring that material to someone else. So for me now, something that I'm very confident doing is giving presentations, not just because I had to give presentations a lot as a student at Waldorf, but also because I had to sing in front of people. I had to act in plays. I had to tell stories to my classmates. And all of those skills helped me understand the material better and also prepared me to be a better speaker in general now.
I love the example you gave of ancient Greece. That's one of my favorite blocks. So as a parent, we get to enjoy the ride too. So I'm sure your family took you out to a few Greek restaurants as well. Okay, our next question. If the school were to be represented as a single person, what would its personality be like in only 3 words?
To be completely honest, 2 of the words that I came up with have already been said. So creative and socially engaged were 2 of mine.
Really?
Really. I'll cover those first and then I'll move on to one unique one.
Okay.
So I think it's been emphasized already, but I think that any student at Waldorf and really any participating member of the community is encouraged to be deeply creative in terms of like creating art in many different forms, and also being creative with your thinking and being creative in how you approach things. In terms of socially engaged, Ali emphasized the hero projects, which were a really exceptional opportunity to explore what some people in the past have done and how they've benefited society. Another thing that I remember was in my grade 5 class, we had a weekly meeting about peacemaking. And it was just a chance for my class to come together and start to have really serious conversations about what it means to be a member of a community, what the value is of qualities like peace and happiness and kindness, and how we can measure these things and bring them to each other. And so one question that I remember being posed is it possible to have peace without conflict? And I think we spent a week or two talking about how important conflict is to actually having peace and to creating peace, because you can't know peace without experiencing conflict. And we took that and we went on to apply those thoughts and those ideas to a lot of other issues. And so I think that being challenged to deal with such big concepts at such a young age and to understand how our actions can really affect the world and how we can make the world a better place really ingrains in us this idea of being socially engaged and giving back to the community. And I think that's really important.
Mm-hmm.
And then my final word was going to be well-rounded, but I think I'm going to change it to driven. So Waldorf students, through a lot of these bigger projects like the Hero projects or the Grade 8 project, which is a year-long project exploring a topic of your choice, Waldorf students are encouraged to take on really big research endeavors. A lot of these endeavors are or do include aspects of research and learning that happen outside of the classroom and even outside of school hours. And I think one thing that would stand out about a Waldorf education is that there isn't really traditional homework. I don't think I did any homework until I was in grade 5, I guess. And even then, it wasn't filling out a sheet to redo some math problems. It was finding a way to bring my learning and make it deeper or connect it to my real life. And so then those skills that you learn in grade 5 and 6 with those sort of early forms of homework, you end up bringing into the bigger projects later on, where you have to mark out how you're going to spend a year researching a topic. And although you have a lot of guidance and support from your teachers, Waldorf students have to be very independent and very organized in their learning. And that's, you know, still something that I struggle with today, but being encouraged and even required to put so much effort into organizing such a big project and to actually follow through such a huge endeavor meant that I developed a lot of self-motivation and drive to do well. And I think that's something that is still benefiting me today.
Wonderful. Thank you. Those are 3 great attributes for the school. And definitely, even though you had the same description, quite different in terms of your explanation of it. So thank you so much. Okay, well, what one thing would you change about the school for the better if you had to choose something?
Wow. That's a good question. It's also a difficult one. I think one thing that's really key about Waldorf education is that it's education that manages to find space away from sort of digital media and technology. And that's extremely valuable. And I know that if I were a parent, or if I do become a parent, that is something that I'm going to seek out. I want my children to learn not on a screen, but in the world and using paper and talking to other people. However, the reality is that screens are becoming increasingly more present in our lives. And a lot of Waldorf students don't end up going through Waldorf all the way to grade 12. So I had very much a Waldorf family who really kept up the idea of not having me use screens outside of school. So it wasn't like I spent my entire day at school without a screen and then went home and went on my computer. I went home and I read, or I played sports or did music or something else. It did mean that when I transitioned into high school, I felt a little bit unprepared for the demands of sort of a regular school. Even though I ended up going to a private high school, it was one where we used screens on a day-to-day basis, and I was even expected to bring my own computer to school. I think that the challenge for Waldorf will be finding a way to incorporate a certain level of education about that kind of technology, both just practical use and also an awareness of what effect that has on people, without taking away from the beauty and the importance of a screen-free education. So I can imagine that things have changed in the 6 or 7 years since I've been in middle school. And I know that teachers are already starting to do that. But I think that that was the only thing that I felt like I didn't quite get. And that's the only thing that I would make a change to is bringing in some sort of screen education without sacrificing the importance of a screen-free education, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And one of the things I love is that when we get the feedback from our alumni, we do take it very seriously, and we have made changes since then. So we have, we have the cyber civics, and we definitely are bringing in that's really valuable feedback. Thank you. Okay. What would families find most surprising about the school?
I think families would find two things very surprising. The first thing is Ali mentioned that academics really aren't sacrificed, and that teachers do a really exceptional job of challenging students and getting students to engage with hard and high level academic material. And the second thing would just be the extent to which teachers care and how much time and effort teachers put into their students. I think it's unmatched and unparalleled anywhere else that Waldorf teachers really know their students and really meet the students where they're at and help every single student on an individual level. And yeah, everything else I could say has already been said.
Thank you, Dasana. All right, last question. What advice would you give to students just entering the school?
Well, I think it definitely depends on when a student is entering the school, but listen to your teachers. In my experience, pretty much every time I disagreed with the teacher knew what was best for me, and the teacher had put in a lot of time and effort into making sure that I was getting what I needed. And by the time I was in the upper grades, I was a lot better at listening to my teachers and having them guide me. But I wish that earlier on I'd been more receptive to what they wanted me to do. And also, you gain so much more from classes when you pay attention and when you're a really involved student right away. So I would say, listen to your teachers and ask as many questions as you can, be as engaged with the material as you can be.
I'm just going to shift it a little bit from that. Thank you. Maybe, what advice would you give to parents?
What advice would I give to parents
who are considering? Yeah.
Well, I know parents are busy, and I understand that, especially in downtown Toronto, it's probably two parents working and they have a lot going on. But one thing that has been emphasized is that Waldorf is a community that extends beyond the students. The parents are a really key part of that community. And I think that it was really beautiful to me that whenever I brought things home from school, one of my parents would help me in some way. So for example, when I was in grade 3, we had to build a shelter because we were learning about different types of shelters. And I chose to build something that was really important to me traditionally, which is a Jewish structure. And my dad actually ended up helping me with that project. And it's one of my favorite memories from my childhood because I got the chance to bring something that I loved at school home to my parents, and they shared in that joy and shared in that activity. So I would say that as much as possible, I would encourage parents to participate in their child's education, to help their children with schoolwork, to attend all of the plays and community events, to learn about Waldorf, because I think that makes it so much more of an enriching experience.
Wonderful advice. Thank you, Dasana Rose. So that's it. We've met with our panelists. Thank you all so much. I really, really loved hearing your answers, and hope we can do this more often. We're going to open it up to questions. So we have Neha, who is helping us out, looking at if there's any questions that have come up, and we can assign it to whichever panelist. And I'm looking over at the chat line and looking for some questions. We also have another open house coming up October 17th at the school, and there also will be another virtual info session that I will be providing on that same day. And that'll be more about the curriculum in the school, but this is really a great opportunity to ask our alumni and parents specific questions for them.
Hi panel, we've just unmuted you. You can ask your question.
Hey, good evening everyone.
So I was
Good
just
evening.
listening to various panelists talking about how the Waldorf concept evolves around involvement with the entire family. Um, so I understand, of course, there'll be activities with children and either of the parents or both of them. But again, as I think Desana pointed out about being in downtown Toronto, both of us working. We have two children. My elder one will be possibly going to Waldorf, and I have a very infant. I'm just trying to understand what is the minimum time commitment. I know it's not an easy number to give, but it's trying to gauge, right? Because it has to be both ways. I mean, we should be able to commit to the Waldorf program for the children in the right manner. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense.
Could I try and answer this
Sure,
one?
go ahead, Desana.
Okay, so that's a very good question. And I would say that it's a balancing act. I think that what's key is that you don't have to be involved all the time at the same level. So my dad worked full time when I was growing up, and he wasn't always able to help me with my schoolwork. And that was important because I had to be independent. I had to make sure that I got my homework done on my own. And for most of it, I could. But that one time that he helped me with the project when he had the free time and when it was something relevant to his skills was really important. Similarly, later on, my parents attended most of my plays and performances at Waldorf, but sometimes they weren't able to make my final performance at an extracurricular activity. I know I never really had parents attend my sporting games when other students' parents could. And honestly, I wasn't too upset by that because I knew that my parents were helping me when they could and with what they were good at and weren't helping me at other times. So I think what's key is that help out when you can, be involved in some way, know what's going on, but also don't feel like you have to be there for every single aspect because the children still need to learn how to be independent. And also because parents share in the duties of being a supportive parent. I think because it's such a community environment, a lot of students get to know their friends' parents very well, which means that parents can alternate between who goes to certain events or who helps out in certain areas. And that helps make the burden easier, especially when you have two parents working or multiple children.
I know, I really appreciate, and that's a good perspective. Because I also get worried about the psychological impact when the child sees other kids' parents being there more vis-a-vis less. Because I see that with my kid even now, when she still goes to public school, which is bang opposite our condo. But stuff is when you see the involvement heavily by other parents compared to us, and if a curriculum involves that, so I mean, just getting engaged because my wife has been involved with ICSE boards where it's even more hectic in terms of parents being involved. But each school sometimes is unique. So yeah, I just want to get that perspective. But yeah, thank you for that different way of thoughts.
Of course.
I was just gonna.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, after you finish that, I know Danielle also wanted to comment as well, but go ahead, Desana.
I would say that at Waldorf, it doesn't feel quite the same if your parents can't show up to something, just because you still feel supported and seen by the community. And so I definitely had very busy parents, but if my friends' parents were there for something, they would come up to me and congratulate me. They might take me home, they might bring me something, and it made me feel like I was being supported and seen. And I think that maybe that doesn't happen at schools where the community isn't as close.
Thank you.
Thank you. Danielle, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that in my experience, the teachers have been really great about communicating when something really the parent needs to come and all the children need to be represented. And there really aren't so many things. Like I would say probably, 2 to 3 hours per term, you have to commit, you have to be there. And nowadays it's all on Zoom anyway, but that they really want every parent there. Because let's say it's a play performance and it's really that child will feel it if their parent's not there, or it's
Of course.
a meeting between the teachers, the class teachers and all the class parents. But that's really not too, that it's not so
Yeah,
heavy,
that's
that
manageable
commitment.
for sure.
That's manageable. Then the other stuff, it's mostly based on interest, like, and availability. So some parents are going to be more available, they're going to do more. Some parents are less available, they do less. And to echo what Dasana said, there's been times I remember where a particular class parent was like hospitalized for, you know, a couple terms, and we kind of rallied around that family and like bringing them lunches, you know, taking the kids out and whatever. So even when the parent's not even able to do their regular duties, sometimes we still help each other. So I wouldn't let that be a barrier. They let you know when you have to go and you have to participate. And we try to keep it manageable so that everybody can contribute something, but nobody's getting totally fried. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Danielle.
that. Thank you for that.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes you have, you know, when the kids are younger, you can't give as much, but there might be another opportunity when they're in middle school. So it fluctuates. And another, you know, Danielle might be able to give a lot, but who knows, in a couple of years, it might all shift.
Oh yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
when my youngest was a baby, I wasn't doing that much. I mean, I couldn't at that point. And then once he got a little bit older, I wanted to, and I was more available, and I did. And you're right, you know, things could change tomorrow and I'm no longer available, but yeah, that's all okay.
Thank you. Great question. Do we have any more questions? We have a couple more minutes, just 2 minutes. So I do see a question here. Okay, so thank you, Jennifer, for hosting, and thank you, Danielle, Ali, and Dasana for sharing your perspectives. For both parents and students, in addition to what you mentioned that you appreciate most about Waldorf Academy, could you kindly share what you appreciate least or dislike? And why don't we start with Ali?
I don't know whether my answers specifically like for me would be super useful, but I would say because it's such an artsy school, this is just from my perspective, if your kid happens to not be the artsiest person, it's sort of inescapable. Like I was never one of those people who was like, oh my gosh, the thing I want most in life is to knit a flute case or whatever. But I sort of had to do it, and I would have like angsty moments of like, oh my gosh, why is this like all consuming? There's like plays and all this stuff. I now look back in that and I'm like, I'm so glad that I got to do that. But I'd say that there were definitely people, including myself, who were like, oh my gosh, do I really want to like present X thing or do X play in front of all these people? Like other schools don't have to do this. Why are we forced to act in all of this extra stuff? But you know what, that's sort of what makes the school Waldorf. So I would just say probably maybe the lack of freedom in terms of the individual, like, oh, I don't want to do this play or whatever. But you know what, it's not even like when you're with everyone, it doesn't feel like an individual endeavor. So that's basically my answer.
Thank you, Ali. That's fair. Dasana?
Much like Ali, what I disliked when I was there is not necessarily what I dislike anymore. I was very consistently pushed out of my comfort zone. I had a few years where I was very shy, and one of my teachers made me get up on stage and sing in front of the whole community as a way to overcome that. And at the time, it was pretty awful, but I'm not shy anymore, and I love public speaking, and I know that that experience contributed to where I am today. So I think, yeah, you get pushed outside of your comfort zone at Waldorf. And I think that there's a very good support system, and you are always helped while you're outside of your comfort zone, but it's definitely challenging while you're going through it. And then much like Ali said, I am not the most artistic person. I love music, but I don't really like drawing. And because every student is expected to participate in the creative aspects, I had to participate in those. And again, I see value in it now, but it wasn't my favorite thing when I was there. I think that often students who do better with the arts and who maybe aren't as gifted academically or who don't enjoy sort of traditional academic work as much are required to participate in that traditional academic side and don't get the chance to be sort of the star and feel really successful or really happy with the artistic work. So I do think that it's very valuable that every single student gets a chance to shine and gets a chance to really bring what they're good at and what they like to do and have that be something that they're, if not graded on, at least have it be a key part of their education that everyone participates in. But there were days when I really just did not want to draw anymore. And I don't draw all that much now. And that's representative of, you know, painting and other creative aspects. But I'm still very glad that I got to do them when I was there.
You appreciate it. Thank you, Dasana. Danielle?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think, you know, as a parent, obviously I've got a different perspective than like Ali and Dasana, and this isn't a question that I had pre-prepared for, but I would say one of the things that's been challenging, and I'm being totally honest, has been sometimes, as you can tell, I'm like a very engaged parent, right? And sometimes, you know, I might have a thought or an idea about something and then trying to figure out who it was that I needed to bring that feedback to and figuring out how it should be followed up on. That in the past has been challenging. But I should say that I don't think I was the only one feeling that way. And then last year, there was this whole change in our governance and it triggered the hiring of a new school director. And I feel like I'm getting a lot more clarity around those issues. And I also feel more heard. So I feel like things are changing in that direction. But there was definitely a time where I felt a little bit frustrated, you know, where it was like, oh, I really need to, you know, address this issue. And I was just kind of going around in circles, like maybe I should talk to this person, maybe I should talk to that person. And I just felt like I was going around. So that was kind of hard. But I think this is, I mean, I've not been with any other private school, so I can't say what it's like. But my impression of the way that we work together is because it's like so many people working together and needing to coordinate and align all these folks, it's really challenging, you know, it's really not easy. So I feel grateful that we now have Ms. Grogan to kind of help give us direction, because otherwise it sort of felt like sometimes we were just going around and you know, the issue wouldn't get resolved. So I guess that would be the thing that I dislike most. I hope that addressed the question.
I think it did, definitely. Thank you, Mary, for asking. We are actually at time. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much, Ali and Dasana and Danielle. Really appreciate the time you took to come out this evening. And thank you, Neha.